just on behalf of the ELSP, just to say welcome to this webinar. It's fantastic to see so many people joining. The purpose of today really is, first of all, just to give a very brief overview of the programme, but also to give an opportunity to potential applicants to the Landscape Restoration Grant call to ask questions, including both on the process and the criteria. Just to say, we hope that you've had a look at the guidelines already, because some of your questions will probably already be answered if you've had a look at those guidelines. Today, it's just to clarify anything that you've not understood. Just to give a quick overview of the format of the session, we're going to start off with a presentation, which will give you an overview of the programme and then give you a little bit more detail about the call. Then we're going to open up the floor to questions. We will not be using the chat box for questions. We will only be taking questions from the Q&A box. So if you do have any questions during the presentation, please can you make sure that you can, that you type them in there, and we'll come back to them after the presentation. But before we start, I'd just like to introduce you to the ELSP team who are on the call today. I'm Sarah Sanders, and I'm the Programme Manager, and I'm managing this call for Landscape Restoration Grants. I am joined by David Thomas, who's the Director of the programme. We also have Vicky online today, and she's doing a wonderful job kind of managing all the technology. So big thanks to Vicky. We also have Iona Haynes here, who's the Communications and Network Coordinator, and she's going to be posting all the links into the Q&A box. We have Barry Mulligan, who's the Seascapes Programme Manager, and he's going to be facilitating the question and answer session after the presentation. And we also have Nancy Ockerden, who's the Science Manager for the programme. So nice to have a lot of the team here today to kind of support the webinar. So please, if you have any questions, do put them in the Q&A box. We will come back to them after the presentation. Okay, David, I'm going to hand over to you to kind of start.
Thanks, Sarah, and welcome everyone to this webinar. Just to echo Sarah's words, it's fantastic to see such a high level of interest in the programme and our grant making. So I'm just going to kick off in a few minutes just to give a very high level introduction to the programme. I would encourage you, and you'll probably hear this several times this morning, to visit our website, to take a closer look at our projects, at our strategy, at our news stories, at our science pages, to get a really good feel for what the programme does and how it works, because this will be really just kind of touching the edges, really. So you'll see on your screens at the moment a statement of our vision and our mission, and I think there's just a few things to kind of pick out from here which are significant if you're thinking about applying to the programme and trying to work out whether this is the right grant making programme for your particular work, for your project. So the first, which I guess is pretty obvious from the programme's title, is the focus on landscapes and seascapes. So this is a programme that focuses at large scale systems beyond the individual site level to think about ecosystem linkages, connections between economy, politics, land use, and nature. So large landscape scale is absolutely fundamental to the programme, and I'll come on and talk a little bit about that in a minute. The other aspect here are the words connected and wilder. Here, the key aspect is that the programme is really looking to support systems that move away from human management, whether that's production systems or indeed management for conservation purposes, to systems that are more driven by natural ecosystem processes. So that is another kind of fundamental aspect to the program. And the third element is those words nature and people. So it's pretty inevitable when you're working in landscapes, particularly in Europe, which are really kind of living landscapes where people live, work, to derive their livelihoods, that people are pretty fundamental to outcomes, to the way that natural resources are used. And we believe this is an important dimension to delivering sustainability in the long term in ways that are just and fair. Sarah, next slide, please. Okay, so just taking a step back there, or going into a little bit more detail, maybe into why we're so focused on landscapes. So it won't have escaped anyone's attention, I suspect, who's on this call, that really we're in a crisis globally and regionally in relation to climate and biodiversity. And these figures of 81% of habitats and 63% of species being in poor condition are taken from the most recent State of Nature report in the EU. So there is a problem, and the scale of the problem requires a kind of interventions to match the scale of the issue. So we're really, the issue with the program is that we believe that you need to move beyond restoring and conserving at individual sites to restore at landscape and seascape scale, to really up our ambition in terms of the way we work. Restoration is seen as one of the best ways of tackling these twin climate and biodiversity crises. And it's now being integrated into the conventions, the Biodiversity Convention, as well as the Climate Change Convention, the SDGs, and most recently, of course, the EU Nature Restoration Law, all have ambitious targets for ecosystem and biodiversity restoration. And it's those targets and those issues that this program responds. Of course, this is not straightforward. It's complex, as I referred earlier. It inevitably involves dealing with issues that go well beyond ecology, to think about economy, politics, policy, livelihoods, culture, and so on. Thanks, Sarah. Next slide. But we believe it's worth doing, and we believe it's important, as I say, to sustainable outcomes. So these are just some of the benefits of restoring at large scale. I mentioned already the importance of moving away from management, and a couple of these issues refer to that. Providing less, allowing more space allows natural processes and naturalness to really create ecosystems that are really, they both don't need management and the high costs of management. They're more diverse ecologically. Large ecosystems as well, they tend to be more resilient to climate change. You'll get a mix of habitat types, but also gradients within them. So altitudinal gradients, for example, allowing species to move and migrate to climate change. And also many ecosystem services, things like hydrological services, flood control and water regulation, they really require large systems to be restored and managed. They can't take place at an individual site level. So for a whole host of reasons, we believe working at large scale is significant, important, and something to be taken seriously, and is what we're trying to deliver through this program, and what we expect projects funded through the program to recognize and be part of their ambition as well. Thanks, Sarah. So funding is certainly the most important activity of the program. It is primarily a grant-making program. We provide a number of different grants. So there are these call for landscape restoration grants. It's out at the moment. We had a call last year for seascape restoration, and we also provide grants for planning of restoration at landscape scale, and those will be announced towards the end of next year for the next call for those. But the funding that we provide and the work that we have taking place and the way we engage with our grant holders, we believe provides opportunities to do so much more, really, to kind of scale up and leverage the impact of those projects. So through our strategy, and you can find this strategy online, we have a number of different activities or different objectives that do this. So one is we seek to advance and apply knowledge through our monitoring, through experimentation embedded within our projects. We work closely with our grantees to both document and then share lessons and experience. We seek to amplify the impact through engaging in policy, through communicating what the projects have achieved, what's been learned, using projects really as a kind of as a showcase to inspire and demonstrate to policymakers that restoration can have these impacts and is possible. And we seek to engage and inspire people at kind of at local level within the projects, but also public more widely through the stories of hope, through the engaging through the arts and culture, which is another dimension to the program. So we have this range of activities of supporting objectives, and we do expect our grantees to engage fully in this. So it's also bearing in mind if you are applying to the program, it's more than simply about receiving a grant. It's also about engaging in a wide range of other kind of programmatic activities. Thanks, Sarah. So a quick word about our governance. So we're funded by Arcadia, which is a charitable fund of Elizabeth Rousing and Sir Peter Baldwin. And the program itself is managed by the Cambridge Conservation Initiative. And this is a partnership between the University of Cambridge and 10 leading conservation organizations. But contractually, any grantees are managed through the University of Cambridge. And a very important part of the program is the oversight and selection panel that both provide the program with strategic advice, but when it comes to grant making, they have a very important role, which is to apply their experience and their expertise to the selection of projects. So we're the management team, but we rely very heavily on our oversight and selection panel to advise on which projects to fund. Thanks, Sarah. So this next slide, it just provides an extract from the terms of reference from the oversight and selection panel. And if you're interested in finding out who they are, there's a link there to our website. It's quite easy to find under the About section of our website. You can find some short biographies of the panel members. And I think that a couple of them are also listening in on this call. Thanks, Sarah. So just to conclude, this is where we're currently supporting projects at the moment. We've got 13 active projects. As you can see, they're spread right across Europe, and they're addressing restoration in a whole range of different landscapes and ecosystem types, from grasslands, forests, marine, coastal, peatlands, uplands, lowlands. And through the diverse geographies and countries, they're addressing a whole range of kind of social, cultural, and economic issues as well. So it's a very diverse set of projects from which we're seeking to learn and then apply that knowledge more widely. As well as the projects you can see there, as I mentioned, we're supporting a number of planning grants, which are working and planning ecosystem restoration in 19 different countries across Europe, which is about half the countries within our eligible geography. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it there and pass over to Sarah. That, as I say, was a very kind of rapid tour of the program, and Sarah now is going to tell you more about the landscape restoration grant specifically.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for that, David. Yeah, for that excellent overview of the programme. As you've just said, I'm now going to talk through some of the specifics of the call that we've just opened. Just a very quick reminder, if you have any questions as we're going through this presentation, please do put them in the Q&A box because we'll come back to them after the presentation. Okay, so what's this all about? What's the purpose of this call? And what are we hoping to achieve with these landscape restoration grants? So I guess the purpose is to restore Europe's landscapes and seascapes. And we want to do that by supporting partnerships to build healthy, connected and wilder ecosystems where nature and people thrive. And I think we'll come back to this quite a few times during the call, but we're really looking to fund kind of large-scale restoration initiatives that are restoring natural processes and therefore kind of benefiting nature, climate and people. I think also just to say these large restoration grants are important flagships, not just for the ELSP, but also for Europe. We're really trying to kind of build the evidence for landscape and seascape restoration at scale. So they, yeah, as I've said, they're important flagships. So they should be kind of models of good practice and an inspiration, and provide opportunities to learn about landscape and seascape restoration as well. In the long term, we are kind of looking to kind of build landscapes or support landscapes that are less managed and less dependent on ongoing management interventions to sustain or increase biodiversity. So some of the key features of the call, I think the first thing to say is that it is a highly competitive process. In the last call, we had 75 expressions of interest. And after having gone through the three-stage process, funding was given in principle to 8 projects, and 7 projects are now kind of under implementation. So in the last call, it meant that there was really kind of a 1 in 10 chance of getting a grant. So it is competitive. In terms of the size of the grants we're offering, the minimum is $1.5 million. The maximum is $5 million. But just to say, we're usually kind of awarding grants of about 3.5 million or above. But having said that, and I will come back to this probably a couple of times during this presentation as well, we do have a 60% threshold. So whichever partner is kind of leading the proposal, they need to be able to demonstrate that they've managed a grant previously. That is 60% of the funds that are being asked. So that means, for example, you know, if you're asking for $5 million, then you need to show that you've managed a grant previously that is $3 million. But if you if you came in with a proposal for 1.5 million, then you would only need to show that you've managed a grant of 0.9 million. So just to say, although you can apply for up to 5 million, you know, we do encourage proposals from the lower end of the grant funding. So if you've got something around 1.5 million and you've managed a grant of 0.9 million, then do put a proposal in. You don't have to go for the full 5 million. In terms of the duration, we don't have a minimum, but most of the projects we support are up to 5 years. I think we recognise that landscape restoration is a long-term process. You know, we're talking, I think, at least 30 years. And so kind of ELSP funding is just going to be supporting that process, you know, for a small part of the journey. Okay, some of the other key features that I thought would be useful to flag is that, we're supporting large-scale landscape restoration. And this is to restore natural processes, then you need to be working over large areas. It's kind of very difficult to put a figure on this because it will depend on the condition of the areas that you're in. But we are usually looking at tens of thousands of hectares. And I really do recommend that you have, if you are considering an application, that you have a good look at the website and the projects and the partnerships that we're already supporting. So, for example, we're currently supporting a project in Cumbria, and that's extending over 33,000 hectares. But we've also supported, we're still supporting a project in Polisia, which is over 1 million hectares. So they are large scale. I think another important feature to flag is that we support established partnerships that have a track record in the landscape and that are operating within a landscape. We support partnerships because we recognize that landscape restoration is complex, and we also realize that one organization is unlikely to kind of be able to kind of do this on their own. So we are looking for partnerships, active partnerships with different partners that may have kind of different roles to play in delivery. In terms of the lead partner, really important that you're a not-for-profit and non-governmental organization and that you have experience of the type and size of project proposed. Really important that we can see that you're active or that you've been recently active within the landscape and that you've got the kind of the stakeholder relationships in place, because there could be a range of landowners kind of operating across a landscape, and that you have an understanding of the context to implement a large restoration project. And as I've said before, we need to see that you've got robust financial management systems in place and that you can demonstrate that you've managed a grant of at least 60% of the value that you're requesting in the last 6 years. So those are some of the key features. Just to cover some of the key criteria, and these are listed, I think, in section 4 of the guidelines, but these are the criteria that the OSP will use, the Oversight Selection Panel will use when assessing expressions of interest. And as you can see, there are 7 criteria. First of all, they'll be looking at scale. So they'll be looking to see that the landscape is a large, continuous or ecologically connected habitat so that natural processes have the space to function and therefore opportunity to reduce the need for conservation management in the long term. They'll be looking at the importance of the area so that the landscape is going to support the delivery of global, regional, or national biodiversity conservation priorities for both species and habitats. They'll be looking at your strategy. Looking to see that you've got a good understanding of the mechanism that you're going to use to help overcome the barriers to landscape restoration or to ecosystem recovery. And these barriers can be ecological, legal, socioeconomic, or political. We recognize that landscapes are working at big scale, so you need to be able to show clear pathways for upscaling, whether this is through influencing policy or kind of making sure the right financial incentives are in place. They'll be looking at the partnership, they'll be looking at the project teams, looking to see that partnerships are committed to long-term collaboration. So, is there a long-term vision that goes beyond ELSP funding? And, is there a strong and stable partnership that's already active in the project area? As well as looking at the partnership, they'll be looking at the extent of stakeholder engagement. We recognise that across landscapes, there could be a range of land tenure. So they'll be looking to see that the proposal has been developed with the engagement of kind of the main landowners, and that it's got support from some of the key actors within that landscape. And they could be the communities that are living within or on the boundaries of the landscape, or it could be your statutory agencies. They'll be looking to see whether what you're doing is replicable, so can be applied to other landscapes across Europe. You know, are you using approaches and addressing issues that are of relevance to landscape restoration elsewhere, therefore have prospects for wider replication. They'll be looking to see whether what you're proposing is realistic. You know, is it feasible? You know, what evidence have you got to support the methods that you're going to use? You know, is it offering value for money? And I think the other area that they will look at, although we don't ask for co-finance, they will be looking to see whether you're exploring opportunities to use ELSP funds to leverage additional funding from elsewhere. And that's kind of really recognizing the scale at which you're working at. You know, ELSP funding isn't going to deliver landscape restoration on its own. It will require funds from a range of sources. Okay, so those are the criteria, the 7 criteria that the OSP will use. Just some of the new features we've introduced in this call. So the first feature is the number of landscapes that can be supported within a country at any one time. So just to say, the programme is heavily oversubscribed, and we're really keen to support geographies and countries that are currently underrepresented in our portfolio. So the maximum number of projects that we can support in one country at any time is going to be 2 landscapes and 2 seascapes. And also just to say, you know, we recognise landscape restoration is complex, and we recognise that in some underserved countries in Europe, there may not be organisations with all the skills, knowledge and experience required. So if you're one of those organisations, we just strongly, you know, encourage you to partner with an organisation, and this could be from another country, or it could be a regional organisation that can help you to fill some of those gaps to deliver an initiative of this scale. This could include support with financial administration. It could be support with the scientific monitoring. It could be help with technical delivery. That's okay, and it's, you know, it's okay as well to include the costs of that within your budget. So any cost to support institutional strengthening if you need that additional support. The other new feature, just to raise, so at stage 2, we do ask projects to provide letters of support from partners and some of the main landowners that are included within a landscape. But we'll also be asking for reference letters from other donors that have previously funded your organisation. So to flag that. And then really just I thought I would be helpful to cover some of the frequently asked questions. So these are some of the questions that we get asked about from organisations when they're considering an application to the ELSP. And I think the 2 areas that we get asked about most of all are to do with either the eligibility or the budget. We frequently get asked about kind of scale and ambition. So these questions are linked to kind of the size of the landscape and, you know, whether it should, you know, whether it covers a continuous area. So as I've said before, you know, we're looking at tens of thousands of hectares, and we're also, you know, looking for landscapes that are continuous. We're not looking for lots of small sites that are dispersed over kind of a large, over a country. The other thing to say that we get asked about quite a lot are kind of natural processes and agricultural landscapes. We recognise that agriculture is going to be a major land use in some of the landscapes we are supporting. But at the same time, we are, supporting projects to kind of move to a less intensive approach so that nature can recover. So, for example, if you have got a landscape and there's, there is agriculture, we're not going to support kind of agricultural activities, but we may, for example, kind of support the establishment of corridors within that landscape to connect habitats that are in good condition. The next thing is the lead partner, and just to stress that the lead partner does need to be a not-for-profit and non-governmental organisation, and we don't support sort of arm's length public bodies. The other thing to flag is we are a programme that's very much kind of focused on delivery and action on the ground, so we don't support standalone research. But we do, however, support monitoring, and that can be up to 15% of the budget so that projects can build evidence and report on impact. And then the other questions we get asked are kind of linked to the budget. I've already mentioned the 60% threshold and how lead partners must be able to show that they've managed a grant previously. That is 60% of the funds that they're requesting from the ELSP. We also get asked about overheads, and we allow up to 15% to go on overheads, but we would expect this to cover office costs and financial administration. And then, as I've mentioned previously, this is not a requirement, but the OSP do look favourably on co-finance when they're reviewing proposals. We recognise landscape restoration requires significant resource, so that we hope that projects can use ELSP funding to leverage co-funding. So those are some of the common questions that we get asked, and we can come back to those in the Q&A after the presentation. Just to give you a short summary about the process and the timetable, we follow a 3-stage process, and it takes about 18 months from now until contracts are signed and implementation can begin on the ground. As David has already said, the OSP are the decision makers in the selection process, so they're going to be reviewing the applications against the criteria, which I've already gone through, and recommend which project should progress. Stage 1, expressions of interest. The deadline is the 14th of January, and this is just kind of very basic information. And it's only probably about 4 pages. It's less than 2,000 words. And we ask you to include two maps, one of where the landscape is located within a country, and the second to show just more detail about the landscape. But more information is available in the guidance. So each application will be reviewed by 3 members of the Oversight and Selection Panel, and this will take place between January and March. The OSP will then convene in March to decide on which of those proposals will go through to stage 2. And we expect up to 20 applications will be invited to stage 2. But either way, you'll hear by the end of March. Then from kind of the end of March to the 8th of July, if you've been invited to stage 2, that's the time to develop your full proposal. And this is up to 12 pages. It includes the budget, the log frame. We need you to provide audited accounts and evidence of government support. And the deadline for kind of submitting your stage 2 proposals is the 8th of July. these will then be reviewed over August and September by the Oversight and Selection Panel, who then meet at the end of September, and 8 to 10 of those 20 projects will get in principle approval and then invited to stage 3. Stage 3 is a much more collaborative sort of design phase where you'll be working with the ELSP team on kind of more detailed planning, and we will also hold a workshop in Cambridge, which should be in December at the end of next year. And then depending how long it takes, but it's usually around 4 to 6 months. We expect kind of contracting, all the documentation and contracting to be completed by the end of March so that projects are ready to start the beginning of April, although start dates may be a bit staggered. But anyway, that just gives you an overview of the process, but we're really kind of looking at 18 months from now until starting in April 2026. And then just thinking sort of further ahead, just some of the systems and support that you can expect if you are successful in receiving ELSP funding. So each project will be supported by a program manager and a science manager. We receive progress reports every 6 months. We hold review meetings with the projects every year. We take an adaptive management approach. We recognise that 5 years is a long time, and the context that projects may be working in can change. So we do kind of constantly review your outputs, and they can be changed as the project is delivered if it's appropriate. We do ask for independent financial audits in year 3 and year 5. And then we really focus on trying to promote your projects through news stories, and we also encourage peer-to-peer learning. We recognise there's a lot of expertise within the projects that we're supporting, so we kind of provide opportunities for projects to get together. It could be a webinar, it could be a knowledge network cafe. We also organise knowledge exchange visits, so projects get the opportunity to visit other projects and to have some time to looking at some of the themes and issues in more detail. So those are just some of the things we can offer if you are successful with funding. And then just to finish off, just to summarise kind of the key information. Obviously, kind of a key date, if you are submitting an expression of interest, is the deadline, which is the 14th of January. Before you submit your expression of interest, please do read the detailed guidance document, which gives you more information on the criteria. We've also got a background information document, which we really recommend that you read as well, which gives more of the background and gives more of the explanation to the criteria. And as I've said before, I also recommend having a look at the website to see the types of projects and partnerships that we've supported previously. EOIs should be submitted online. It's a very short form. We'll be running a one-to-one session on the 4th of November, so just a little bit more information about that now. We'll be sharing the link to the booking form at the end of this Q&A, but this is, when you click on the link, this is the form that you'll see. But basically, we're offering kind of 20-minute sessions to discuss any areas of concern with the ELSP management team. And we've got 3 members of the Oversight and Selection Panel who will be kind of joining us for these one-to-one sessions. There are 5 of us, so we've got a limited number of spaces. I think it's 25 in total. We may amend your appointment, so you can choose who you wish to kind of have a discussion with, but we may change that depending on the nature of your query. And just to say, that will be Monday, the 4th of November, and we'll be running that from 9:30 to 11:30 UK time, and we'll be sharing the link to those drop-in sessions at the end of the Q&A. And then just very finally, before we move on to the Q&A, I just encourage everybody, if you want to kind of stay up to date with the Endangered Landscapes and Seascapes programme, please do sign up for our newsletter. The QR code is on the slide, and follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter, and our handles are there as well.